I told God, I'm like, okay, keep bringing this Dallas thing up. I'll visit, okay? I'll give it a try. But I promise you, Dallas was not not on my mind at all before my Houston trip. At all. Hello, hello. Welcome back. My name is Vanessa. If you're new here, welcome. Glad that you can join in. So I'm pretty sure you've all already saw like the topic, the title. So, this may be a long one, so I'm not going to do too much with the introduction. Just gonna jump right in. Stay tuned. I guess I'll start with how did I get to the decision on moving to Texas? So let's start there. Well, where I was in life at that time, I was in my 20s. I was just looking for something new to do, and I was just kind of fed up with Florida. And at that time, I lived in Orlando, and I had a bachelor's degree, and I was working and things like that. The dating scene was terrible. Really didn't get out that much because I worked a lot. So I just felt like in my spirit, like I needed something new. And so I was just that type of person where I was just like, I'm gonna do it. I mean, I really didn't have anything to lose. So at that time I did two things. I had applied for grad school for the University of Central Florida. And while I was waiting, for those who applied before, you know, like there's like months that you wait for a decision to be made on your application. And so I was waiting to hear back from the grad school, but I was like getting discouraged, and I was like, well, if they don't, choose me to get into this grad school, I'm just gonna up and move to Houston, because that must be a sign that it's time for me to leave. So I was just applying for jobs online and, trying to see if I can get a job before I moved. And that, like I say, that was around 2016, 2017. And the summer of 2017, I received an email from my graduate program, and they said, congratulations, we want you to come to our school. So now, but yeah, I had already graduated from the University of Central Florida already, but I wanted to do the master's program there as well. So I ended up going to grad school. And so I was like, well, Lord, I guess you want me to stay here and complete this. And so I ended up having to quit my job at that time, but I'll do another video on that transition for grad school and me quitting my job and things like that. But yeah, so that was kind of the turning point, or like the pause on me moving to Texas at that time. So while I was in grad school, I was like, I still want to move to Texas. So grad school is only 2 years. It was a 2-year cohort. And so around that last year, I had to basically get a game plan on what I was going to do to move to Texas. And so I would be telling my professors, my classmates and things like that, I'm like, my goal is to, get a job in social work, move to Texas, and start my new life. Because it was like the perfect plan. It was like, I didn't have a boyfriend at that time. I didn't have a lease, because I had moved in with my godparents when I went to grad school. And I don't have any kids, for those who never knew that. So I really didn't have anything that, like, other than my family. My family is in Florida, of course. But I really didn't have anything that was like, oh yeah, you have to stay here. So I was ready to jet, ready to jet. So I graduated with my master's, and nobody really tell you this, but I guess they do. But when you graduate, you think that all of the possibilities are gonna come like this, and that you're just gonna have so many options for jobs. And some of it was true and some of it wasn't true. Because I had been applying ever since like the top of that year before I graduated, and I didn't land a job. And so during that summer, I kind of fell into like this depression, because I had to move in with my biological mom, because my stepdad had passed that year. like I said, I'll do another video and kind of explain that part of my life. But, you know, it was very depressing because I had to, you know, move back in with my mom. I didn't have a job. I wanted to move to Texas, and here I was still in Florida, and it just wasn't where my heart wanted to be. And I really felt a pull to go to Texas. But let's stop right there. Let's rewind a little bit. So, how did I make the decision? So, initially, back in 2016, 2017, I wanted to move to Houston. I had a friend that stayed in Houston, so that was perfect. It was a guy friend, and you know, it wasn't nothing romantic or anything, but it was someone that I knew. So I was like, yeah, I'll move to Houston. Everybody moves to Houston. So I ended up, during one of my spring breaks while I was in grad school, I went to Houston by myself. I met up with my friend there, of course, but I went to Houston just to check out the city, see if it was my vibe, see if it was, you know, my next place to move or to live. So went to Houston. I stayed for a couple of days, and a lot happened while I was there. And I'll just share it really quickly. But before I was going to Houston, people would say, oh, you're going to visit Houston, you're moving to Houston. Oh, Dallas is a nice place. It was like every time I mentioned Houston, they would somehow find a connection to say, oh, but you got to visit Dallas. And I was like, okay, but I'm moving to Houston. Why do you keep bringing up Dallas? And so I would just kind of ignore them, like whatever. And so maybe about 2 weeks or a week or so before I actually went to Houston, I was going to visit Lakewood, because at that time I would, you know, listen to their sermons and things like that. And so I was like, I got to visit when I go to Houston. And so that was the plan. Well, I had somehow this notification that said TD Jakes was going to be at Lakewood the same week I was going to go. And I wasn't going like on a Sunday. I was going like on a Wednesday night. So it was just weird. And he was speaking Wednesday, Thursday, and I think that Friday, the whole time I was there. And I was like, okay. So I still went. So while I was in Houston, went to church. The first weird thing, I guess, that was what happened, like I said, I was by myself. So I didn't know this is like a big church, you know, I'm not used to it. So I found parking fairly well. And then there was this lady that was in the parking lot that I ran into, and she just started talking to me. Well, I just was walking with her into the building because like I didn't know where I was going. She seemed to have been there before. So I was like, hey, I'm walking in with her, and we were talking. So I don't know if this is a normal thing for Lakewood, but if you know Lakewood, it's a really big church. And I lie to you not, like I walk in with this lady and she takes me all the way to about the third or like the second or third row from the front of the church. And mind you, TD Jakes was speaking that night. This is my first time in the church. So it was very overwhelming. And I remember, you know, sitting through service was great. And TD Jakes, before he go to speak, he started talking about why he moved to Dallas. And I was like, here go this Dallas thing again. And, you know, I said it was, you know, I listened to his testimony about it. And for whatever reason, I just kept feeling this tug to move to Dallas. And I was like, no, but I'm here in Houston. And so the whole time that I was in Houston, I was just really trying to get the feel of the city. You know, I would go out to eat and, you know, of course I linked up with my friend and just really just, you know, explored and, you know, to see, is this the feel that I'm trying to get? And unfortunately, it wasn't. It wasn't. Houston just was not my speed. Like it just, you know, great city. I've been back to visit and love to visit, but to live there, it just was not, it wasn't me. It wasn't me at all. the next thing, I end up leaving Houston. And I remember my uncle, he was like, well, how did you like Houston? Are you going to move there? And I told him, I was like, it was just something that it didn't really click with me. And he was like, well, keep praying on it. You'll find where you need to go. So fast forward, I ended up talking back with my ex later on that year. And we decided that, you know, once we graduate grad school, okay, well, let's check out Dallas. So during our winter break, we flew to Dallas separately, and then we met there in Dallas, you know, just to check out the city. Because I'm like, okay, because I told God, I'm like, okay, keep bringing this Dallas thing up. I'll visit, okay? I'll give it a try. But I promise you, Dallas was not on my mind at all before my Houston trip, at all. So we ended up going to Dallas. I was with my ex. We were together, and we really explored the city for us, like, because we were planning on moving to Dallas together at that time. And so it was amazing. That whole trip, I really enjoyed just the vibe of the city. It was during the winter, so here in Dallas, like, it's very festive, and they put lights more than Florida. Like, they put lights on the trees and have we went to go see the big Christmas tree in the Galleria Mall. So it was a lot. And so I just really enjoyed my time. I really did. I didn't want to leave when it was time for me to go. And my ex ended up staying longer than I did. So that was a bummer. But so that's how I kind of made my decision, because of that particular trip. I was like, when I left Dallas, I knew for a fact this was the city I was meant to move to. And I felt good about it. I felt peace about it. So that's how I made the decision. Now, the preparation to move. So, like I said, that was in grad school. Then eventually I graduated, moved back in with my mom, and time was ticking. It was the summer of 2019. And I just kept feeling this pull to move. And I just was like applying for jobs. I'm like, I don't want to move without having a job, without having a place to stay. Like, I wanted to do it orderly. And I guess God was like, look, you're just gonna have to go. You're gonna have to go. Because it was like I was listening to sermons, and just was such a pull on me to go to Dallas. And so I made the decision in a week. It was like the week of July 15th, around that time. And I sat down with my mom, and I told her, I was like, I'm gonna pack up my stuff and I'm just gonna drive. I'm gonna go. And I remember telling my parents, and they were like, are you sure? You know, there was some hesitation, because of course, they didn't want their baby girl to just get on the road and just go. But I knew deep inside, like, that's what I had to do. That's what I needed to do. And so my mom, she sensed that too. So she really respected that. And so for the next couple of days before I got on the road, my parents and everyone, they helped me pack my car. I sold some of my things. And I just, told my family, hey, I'm leaving, I'm going to Texas. And they were supportive. They really were. So I really appreciate that. And so it was a Sunday or Saturday. I think it was a Sunday night. I got on the road, and my first stop was Ocala, Florida. And I went to my friend's place. She had a house in Ocala, and that was like a good starting point to get on 75 and head north and get out of Florida. And so I stopped there, and just to see her, because at that time she was like one of my really good friends. And I was like, well, I can, see my good friend, have a couple of laughs, and then I'll be on my way. And so it was really good to stop there. So I stopped there first, and then the next morning I got on the road and I was on my way out of Florida. And so I actually ended up doing like a 2 day, I guess you can consider 3 day, but it was really 2 days. I drove from Ocala to Mobile, Alabama. And I've been to Mobile before, but this was my first time as an adult. And so I stopped in Mobile. I was on an interesting side of it. The accents were very strong, and I was like, huh, this is interesting. But yeah, so I stopped there for only a night, and when I made it there, I felt accomplished, but honestly, there's pieces of me that was scared. I was scared. Because you have to think, I was driving alone. I'm a female, and, I drove in the daytime. Luckily, the weather was good, but it was just that unknown feeling. And my car was packed to the T. And so I stopped in Mobile, and then stayed there for a night. And then I was on my way. I ended up leaving that next morning at about 7 a.m. And so on my way, leaving out of Mobile into Mississippi, there was like this big log that was in the road. And I didn't swerve like really hard or anything, but I just kind of tried to go around it in a sense with keeping, my distance from the cars that were in the road. But I guess I didn't go around it enough because it clipped my tire. And I ended up blowing out my tire on I-10. And so, I'm telling you, God was with me the whole way. When I clipped my tire, I was able to kind of slowly get to the side of the road. And it was like maybe like at least 4 lanes. It was a pretty wide, I-10 was pretty wide at this point. And so I was able to get on the side of the road, and then the tow truck came to me. But I had a Nissan, and the Nissan dealership was literally at the next exit, less than like a mile away. That's how I know it was God. Like, it was just, and when I got there, they were like, you can have your food, you can have whatever, just sit in the break room, we'll take care of it. And so I didn't have to pay for my tire. So that's a whole nother testimony, But God really was with me the whole way of this trip. And so I was able to get back on the road around about 1 o'clock, went through Louisiana, and then I went straight up through Louisiana and cut across to go to Texas. And so that trip was a journey. I was tired. I had to play a lot of music, just to keep me going, keep me motivated. I stopped for gas maybe about 2 times. My car is really good on gas, so I really didn't have to stop too much. And yeah, I was on my way. But my goal was to try to get on I-20 or into Dallas before nightfall. And since I had that flat tire, it pushed me back for time. So I ended up making it to Dallas around about, I want to say it was maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, no later than 10. It wasn't too late. But it was nighttime. And I just remember riding into Dallas. I had to be like downtown because I wasn't familiar at this time. So I didn't know where I was, but riding in, it was big, the skyline is beautiful, and it was busy highway, and it just felt so refreshing. Like I made it. And I'll always remember that feeling. And I'm like, I'm here in Dallas. I think I probably screamed like, Dallas, I'm here. It was just such an exciting time in my life. And so, as you probably can already see, that I came by myself. My ex wasn't with me. We ended up breaking up. And so I ended up moving here by myself. And so I think that I'm going to pause on the story for now. And I think I'm going to pick up later on and explain or tell you how I eventually got settled. And so when I came into Dallas, I'll say this little piece. When I came into Dallas, I stayed I stayed in a hotel. I'm trying to think of what hotel it was, but it wasn't the best part of town. Now that I know it now. But it was a hotel that me and my ex stayed in for one night, and it was really cheap. And then we went to another hotel, but I ended up staying at this hotel when I came to Dallas for maybe about 5 days. And when I came, I was sick. And so I'll get into that on the part 2 of this, but I just wanted to put this video out to kind of share my testimony on what brought me to Dallas and, that whole transition. So it's a pretty interesting story. So I'll do a part 2. Hopefully that's all I'll need is another part 2 and not a part 3. And let you know what caused me or what led me to Texas from Florida. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Leave a comment if you moved from somewhere, if you're here in Texas, if you're here in Dallas, let me know. Share your testimony. So yeah, stay tuned to the next video. All right, bye.